Hello and welcome back to Lorcana Villain. My name is Baker, and today is a very special episode. We have another group podcast. I have 4 fantastic guests to talk all about the world format. No long, fancy, flashy intro today. The links to all of these fine gentlemen will be down below, but I'm sure you know them. We have the wonderful Bennet, Artabax, Harlan Lists, and joining us from over in America, we have Sky. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here tonight. I really appreciate it. For me and Harlan, it's 10 p.m. For our German friends, it's 11 in the evening. But I was keen to get someone from the States over here, and I couldn't ask for better than fellow Villain Club member, my boy Sky. But yeah, these are all players that I have so much respect for in the Lorcana community. Their accolades speak for themselves. Incredible people, incredible and successful players of their own accord. And I've asked these guys to prepare the 3 decks that they would be playing if they were playing in the World Championship format. What is that format? It is triple deck constructed. All Worlds players need to build 3 different decks representing all 6 ink types, and they will have the opportunity as they go into their match to bench an opposing deck. And the way that works is they'll have tokens to represent the ink combinations. They'll give those tokens to their opponent, and their opponent will decide which deck they want to bench. It is open deck list, so they will also get the opportunity to look at the full card list. Both players will reveal what deck they're benching at the same time, and that deck cannot be used for that match. Then both players will face down put the ink token that represents the deck that they want to play for game 1. Both players will reveal that at the same time, and that will be the deck that they use for game 1. If you win with a deck, you have to retire that deck for the rest of that match and switch to your remaining non-bench deck. If you lose, you may stick with the same deck for the next game, or you may switch to the other deck. So with all that said, I asked these guys to prepare the 3 decks that they will be taking into the World Championship. I'm going to ask them to present them and get them to talk us through their thought trail, why they've made decisions that they've made, and if the bench phase of this format was important in deciding some of these lists or some of the specific cards in these lists. So Harlan, Artabax, and Sky, I've had the pleasure of having you all on the channel before, and I thank you for being here. But Bennet, your first time on the channel. I've been waiting for a while to make this happen, and I'm glad we finally were able to. I would like to start off with you, my friend. So welcome. You have let's go, let's do it. You have sent me 3 wonderful deck lists. Is there one in particular that you would like to start with?
Yeah, let's start with yellow-green.
With yellow-green, okay, let's do it. Let's mute that one. Okay, this is a bit of this is sort of your bread and butter, really, so talk us through it, Bennet.
Yeah, that was the starting point of my lineup. I first made thoughts about triple deck constructed when I got asked to play on a show match against a friend of mine who's also part of the team Artabax is in. It's members, and therefore I 100% wanted to play my pet deck and build my lineup around it. I was lucky that I know members was playing like Steel Song, and therefore there was my starting point thinking about, okay, yellow-green is performing relatively well against it, so I want decks that are able to beat Steel Song too. And while building the lineup, I came to the conclusion that all these decks I brought, I will go through them one by one, are particularly good against slower decks. And therefore, my vision for this lineup and for a triple deck constructed is to target the slower decks, and specifically red-blue, who I think is one of the most present, or will be one of the most present decks in the format, because it is one of the best decks right now. Very, very nice color combination, and the other options you can build with those two are viable as well. So that was kind of my starting point from there. And then I had to think about, okay, what do I maybe want to ban? And since yellow-green is the first deck I brought, and I know that this is in Diablo Mirrors, the worst one performing, that was my thought to definitely ban green, kind of. I know you can't really generalize it, but most of the green decks do play Diablo, and I don't want to face that. Okay, so for yellow, for this specific list, there are cards in it, like, for example, Hidden Cove, which I cut for the last tournaments where Ember Steel and more board-centric decks came out of the meta, was one card I cut because I wanted to focus more on singing Under the Sea early. I put cards in like Vanessa Ursula in this single deck meta, but because I want to beat slower decks, specifically red-blue, and I also want to be able to play against red in general, red-purple, also a very viable deck, those Hidden Coves came in again because they give my Diablo one more safety net against, for example, Brawl. I expect, therefore, also to play against Peter Pan Shadowfinder, who is a 2/3 evasive, which with Cove I can get around better. I put the bare necessities back to 4 because I will want to beat decks that tend to have not only characters and try to win the games with non-character cards like a mana, like songs like Be Prepared, of course. I want to get rid of it because I don't want to run into it. I also, for this choice, have, for example, the World's Greatest Criminal Mind because I want to beat the Shark, and that would be an answer for the Shark. There's a possibility if I would have attended Worlds and of course tested like a lot of the matchups, there is a good chance that actually this list would go down to 2 Under the Seas because you already see with the 2 Painting the Roses Red and the 3 Kidas, the prioritization or singing Under the Sea consistently, also with the debuff, is got deprioritized. And I think that's most of the things I can say to that list. We can actually jump to the next one, which is it's a purple gray. To be honest, that was also because I knew that my opponent in the show match was playing Steel Song most likely, and I figured that this deck, with the possibility to gain lore even with no characters on board, is a good choice against such a deck, and also against slower decks. When they usually get ahead in the matchup against aggro and were able to defeat the first aggressive wave, kind of. For example, for Churner Dogs or for the Ember Steel aggro as well, there's a good chance that those aggro decks will never come back again because they will just get taken out. They play something, and then there are cards like Brawl, like the Elsa, who was able to turn those cards sideways and make the ability to gain lore with questing quite hard. And I figured that this burn list, I think Spetsy likes to call it story list, is a way of, even though we are losing the board and the aggression after we were able to get a good amount of lore in the early game, we still have ways of winning the game because of the direct lore and don't get taken out just because our opponent were able to control or get back into the game. That's basically the idea. It's probably also, it's not like perfectly battle tested. I would not recommend this list card by card for a Worlds competitor, for example. I would say please test this and test this. But I figured that this would be a great way in building the deck to the goal I want to achieve. We of course have cards like Gathering Knowledge, the Honey Maron, the Roses, the Goat, who are able to gain the lore, which I said. We have bounce mechanic to in case we don't have the draw with the Chromicons and the Dog, which is another route of slamming your hand down and still be able to find resources in the mid to late game and be able to find those direct lore gainers, basically. That is the thoughts behind it. I hope that makes sense. Also on this here, shout out to Luminator, who gave me a pep talk because he is prominent for, also part of Artabax's team, who is prominent for playing Purple Steel. And as the last deck because those colors were open then. And as I said, I think red-blue is one of the best deck, one of the most potent deck. If you know how to pilot it and if you know what you want to do in specific game scenarios, and especially against what you are playing, and you're piloting it correctly, you can be very, very efficient with the cards you're playing. Also, as said, I wanted to target the slower decks, specifically red-blue. So I packed for the mirror, I packed a Let It Go, and I packed a Hades as well, because I figured, oh, by the way, shout out to Freak Out, he's my teammate, and he gave me a good coaching for red-blue, also for building the deck. I mean, of course, the ground build is from DKP. Everyone knows that this list is literally called DKP, but he told me how to play it, and I figured that with the Hades and the Let It Go, we can cross the plan which you usually want for the mirror, where you want to ramp up pretty fast to play the shark first, to build up a pressure with the shark, and with these two answers I am more able to answer that. And there's one brawl in it, because one-offs in this specific deck makes sense, because we can take back every card with the shark again, so it's enough to play one copy of the card if it lands into the discard. And because I want to ban green in the first place, and I don't usually will deal with Diablo, I cut the brawl down to one, which is rather unusual, but that's the reason behind that. And I think besides that, it's pretty standard. And I feel like the lineup I brought is able to target the as I said, slower decks. And I think
love it.
There was
Fantastic presentation, thank you. In a moment, I want to open the floor up to everyone else here to ask any questions or like any comments they've got about it. But one that I'll ask you straight away is, so like, it's a nice point that you finish on, and like referencing one of the things that I asked you all to take into account, which is the benching phase, right? So this one brawl might seem a little out of place, but if your plan is to always ban Emerald, then it does make a lot more sense. And I think there could be some other examples of that as we look over the other lists. My question would be, playing this list, how would you feel into red-purple shark with Peter Pan Shadowfinder? Because that seems something that you would want quite to like be able to remove. It seems like another quite important brawl target. Would you not be that concerned about something like that?
To be honest, the purple evasive matchup, I haven't played too much with the list. I think if I were to prepare for Worlds directly, I would maybe come to the conclusion that I would need a second brawl. So that's definitely a fair question you're asking. But if the Peter Pan is on the board, like Peter Pan Shadowfinder is kind of telegraphic, because we know that the card that comes down after Peter Pan will have Rush, and normally Rush is a surprise factor, and because of the teleportation, of
telegraphing, you telegraph it.
Telegraphing, yes, that was the correct word.
I see you.
I can actually play around it, kind of.
Great.
I also have the Zizo here, so we do have answers to that card, but definitely fair question of yours. And also what I want to add, I think it's a great format, and we will see how it will play out, but it's also a very hard format to prepare for, because you need to keep so many things in mind, and just one error in preparation can literally lead to you losing those games, and your strategy is not going off. So
yeah, it does seem hard to prepare for. I love it though. I do love the art and the idea of like proving yourself as, like, again, the tagline they're throwing at us is the master of all links, right? You'll hear me say that a lot over World Championship weekend, I'm sure. But I like it in concept, in principle, and that will be my final question for you all, which is to ask your verdict on what you think about triple deck format. Obviously, it's hard to tell unless you've played it, but just from an audience perspective, what do you expect to see from it? But no, great. I'd love to open the floor to anyone here that has any observations, any questions, or just any comments about any of Bennet's lists here.
Yeah, I would like to. Which deck would you? I mean, probably the most what the opponents ban from you. It's also hard to decide, hard to say, or hard to predict what they will ban from you. And which is your deck that you would prefer to start most of the time, or do you even, or is that even That's maybe hard to
That's
say.
definitely a valid question because if I'm correct, I hope I'm correct. You know if you start game one or not, and then you decide which deck you play, or do you first?
Yes, yeah. You find out
okay,
who's
so
going
perfect.
first.
Oh,
Yeah.
really? Okay.
Yeah, and therefore that's what I also liked about the purple steel, because it's such a great deck that takes advantage of going first, because we can be the aggressor. We are able to close out the game one turn earlier because we started on the play, and therefore if I go first, I would most likely go first with the purple steel. And I mean, depending on what opponent is banning, I would either go green yellow or DKP red blue on going second.
I think it's important to say, like, all of these players here are kind of known for a specific deck, but a lot of players are, but I think it's important to know that, like, to be good with one deck consistently, you have to know them all. You have to understand what they all do, how they work, and be able to counter them efficiently, right? So you have to have a decent amount of knowledge about the entire meta, even if it's not so per se your pet deck. But yeah, Harlan, Sky, these lists in particular, does anything speak to you? Are they colours that like you have any questions or opinions on?
Yeah, I have a question for you. So, in my mind, I think on paper the two most, I guess, would say raw, powerful options as far as the 3-deck format goes would be Amber Steel, Red Blue, and Green Purple as 3, or Green Steel, Red Blue, Yellow Purple. And I think most of that is just because, in my opinion, Steel is just way ahead of the meta at this point. Some of the cards that those two decks have, it just seem to be like so far on rate, and like throughout the last 3 sets, it seems like they each get 1 or 2 cards that seems like pretty high rated above the rest. So my question would be, if you're facing these two options, what do you think they would ban from your lineup?
That's a good question. Can't we? That's. I didn't really take this question into account for building my own lineup, because I just need to be consistent with all 3. That even if they ban one deck, those 2 alone will still do the job and do the things I want them to do. If that's also what I think that's interesting there, because Baker already said a lot of players are famous for their color, for example DKP for red blue, and if I build my lineup for Triple Deck Constructed, I go in with the for example with the plan on focusing aggro, and therefore I want red blue banned. But now I'm playing against DKP, who's famous for playing that deck, and then there's the question if I want to ban his best deck, or I probably still need to get my strategy out. So that probably depends on the view of each player and their lineup. Maybe some lineups are very, like, they use just three good decks who can win, and therefore they are more likely to ban my yellow-green, for example, because they say they're scared of this deck. But if they are scared of aggro because they are built for X and Y, they would probably ban the purple steel.
Okay, sure. And
Yeah.
I guess it's kind of a follow-up question that goes along with this, but say those 2 lineups are what you're expecting. What would you like them to ban? Is there any pick that you're like, hey, I think people might ban this, but it's probably almost a trap, I would say, because your other decks are so strong against what you would expect?
I think all 3 decks have to be potent enough to win. So I would probably try to build the lineup so I don't really care what they ban. So yeah, can't really answer it. Maybe.
Sure. It's tough questions when it's like.
I good. It's so good because
there's no perfect answer, like, for sure, and you'd build them
Yeah,
all
but-
with everything in mind. So
It's worth floating the question, though, just because it gets us thinking, it gets the audience thinking as well. So, like, even if there isn't a definitive answer, that is a bad thing. But
these are the type of questions that I found myself asking, last night. Like, oh man, this format is so deep because you have to think about what do they want to ban? Okay, if you're expecting them to ban this into this lineup, then you build your other 2 with, into what you left them with. So it's interesting.
Just speaking from my point of view, from my lineup, for example, it would be a really tough decision for me what to ban here in this lineup from you, because
Sure.
it's really hard to say. All 3 are very strong. You are kind of intrigued sometimes to ban just the purple steel deck just to not lose,
Not get run down.
on the play. but also green yellow is very strong. It's very hard to say in your lineup.
It's good. It's a good sign that it's hard to
that's
right?
a really good sign.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the reaction you want, right? But to your
Yes.
point, Sky mentioned it's a trap. Like, this is why it's interesting to get different players are going to feel differently about it, right? Like Bennett just said, like, I just like to make all three consistently good, so that no matter what they ban, I still feel confident. I remember a couple of weeks ago, I was remote casting an American event where they trialed Triple Deck Constructed, and there was one interview of a player who was giving his thoughts, and he was like, I'm only running Emerald Steel as a trap so that they'll ban it and let me play Blurpool, which is what I really want to run. Which was interesting because, again, like, some players will think about it on that different, deeper level, so I think that's super interesting.
Yeah, I really like the lists. I thought with like the power level of Amber Steel and Green Steel that like no one probably would have thought I'd put Purple Steel in there, but it makes sense. You could either do as like has been mentioned, like the Steel deck as like sort of a trap, so you can do the other two decks as what you want to play. But like you say here, like I don't really want to get run down by Purple Steel, but also I don't feel it's on the same power level as the other ones. But the interesting point is like when you were building these, did you think about any of the decks that don't survive in traditional Lorcana, but in this format do thrive, like the green blue? And I remember there was a German list with a green purple that was like full on bouncing, played the Chromacons. That deck that it wouldn't survive in traditional Lorcana because you're going to get matchups that you just can't win. But if you're able to ban said matchup, you could win it. I think there's like going to be some really crazy decks played at this event.
I think it makes sense to at least watch or take a look at everything that's on the plate, and that's even though it's not wouldn't be a good deck in the one deck format, to at least think about what this deck could potentially do to me, to not sit there in Orlando and having to have this thought process from the start there, and at least be a bit prepared for them. But I can't really. For example, if I'm sitting there and my opponent is having a racer deck with sugar,
We saw that on the day as well. Races were cooking.
If one player has this, he will just be my favorite player of the tournament. Yeah, to at least go until the tier 4 decks, maybe, to match your question, that makes total sense. But I would not change cards in my lineup because of, for example, green-purple stuff, bounce or something. But to at least think about what this deck could do to my lineup is a valid and important thought process before playing the tournament.
Let's move along to the all-father of EA Tempo, and I'm super glad to see that one of these lists is indeed my man's colours, Artabax. Love you to bits, mate. Thank you so much for being here. It's always a pleasure. I would love to hear all about the 3 decks that you've decided to bring along. Is there any one in particular that you would like to start with?
So my thought process was like, I really think the level, or how can you say, the level 1 lineup that most people think of is green, purple, amber, steel, red, blue, which could be considered as the, I don't know, if you don't think any further, strongest lineup or something. It's hard to say, but it's for many people like, so that was the first conclusion. And I'm really intrigued by that because it's like, I think all 3 decks are just very powerful, and I don't think it's very easy for some rogue options to still overcome this very easily. So I think you have a solid lineup when you pick them, regardless. And I try to build all the 3 decks to be very good in the mirror because, like, that's what I, have to at least assume to get a lot of the times. Because I think it's like Bennett said, it's like it's really easy to overthink things sometimes because you can't think about every lineup and stuff, and you should still just pick decks that are good, obviously, but that just have a power level, are just strong decks to just be versatile enough. And because red, blue, and amber steel are for me like the 2 best decks of the format right now. That's, I would say. And green, purple comes not very much, that comes very close. So it's so obvious for me to pick this. Although I know it will be the thing that probably everyone will be expect. But I think it's still reasonable. So for green purple, it's a very basic list. My good friend, shout out to Primer, by the way, a good friend of mine won a big 250 player tournament yesterday in Belgium with green purple tempo.
Nice.
And yeah, he played it masterfully and was just great, and I was very happy for him. And it's not too far away from his list, or what I would say is right now stock green purple. But I wanted to play Iagos because Iagos are the mirror breaker in green purple, and I wanted to get some of them in because if I expect the lineup, this most popular lineup that you said, I would probably ban most of the time red blue, and therefore Iagos are not good against red blue, but I will ban that anyway. So I would just don't care about that too much because I think red blue is a very great deck, and especially against Embassy, what we see soon, it's a very good against that. And yeah, the rest is like, I would say, basic green purple stuff. Some levers to have a bit more card draw, a bit more versatility. Pull the lever is not even wrong lever is not only good with pull the lever, it's just a good versatile removal tool. And yeah, it's still pretty fast, although I don't know. It's like Bennett said, I didn't have that much time to I didn't test that much that I could do if I would prepare for World. So it's like still like the first field crafting here.
Yeah, full disclaimer to the audience, like if these guys were playing Worlds, I'm sure these lists would be different. They'd have done months of testing. I literally got maybe 4 or 5 days ago, gave these guys a heads up, and some of them were busy in that time. So full disclaimer, these guys have rushed to get these together for this presentation. So I'm sure there would be some differences if you'd have done a bunch of testing, but I appreciate it nonetheless. And I would ask about the one wrong lever is what settled you on just a 1 count, because I'm a big fan of the Artacast, UNLD. I've heard you talk a lot about green purple in various forms, and before we got the levers, there was conversations I remember you having about like Mother Knows Best just for sharks, if nothing else. Sometimes feeling like a bit of a necessary evil, like this card you don't really want to play, but sometimes you just need that response. Obviously wrong lever gives us kind of an inkable, non-singable version of that, so I think it's a great addition. What left you on just 1?
Yeah, I think I usually like one-offs in open deck lists because the opponent have to respect it, and I think it's a good card, but it's not like the card you always need. It's sometimes a good tool, and it's also like honestly like very hard to fit all these cards in here.
Sure.
It would be really hard for me to cut something else. I would like to play more, but it's hard for me to cut things here. You could even maybe cut another Peter Pan, but green is not the color I ban most of the time, so I still need a bunch of Peter Pans.
Yeah, and if you're banning red-blue, then you don't need to worry about sharks probably anyway. So that's probably another factor. Nice. Yeah. And what next? You've got another
Ember
spicy
Steel
ones. Yeah, let's do it. Let's hear all about it.
My Ember Steel is really, really hard tagged into the mirror, and against aggro in general. And I like this list personally really much, and it's a bit under how can I say, underestimated. I think the people don't talk enough about lists like this. It's basically a bit less aggressive Ember Steel aggro with a bit more songs, but still no wheel and docks. But with aerial as well, so you have a bit more gas than just basic Ember Steel aggro, and it's a lot more removal with Fosus as well. So you like in the mirror, it's really strong, I think, and it's really strong against aggressive decks in general. The only deck that you really, really don't want to face is red blue, and that's what you're gonna ban. And I think if their opponents don't ban this, I'm really, really happy, I think, because I will ban red decks, and then I'm really, really happy with playing this deck, and I think I'll hopefully get my win with this deck relatively easy, I hope. And yeah, and yeah, I think it's not too different from Amber Steel Acro. A bit more like singers, like the Ursula and stuff. A bit less questing power, of course, than Amber Steel Acro. No ladies and stuff. You could still run ladies. It's hard to say what is the perfect. You could even go like. I also thought about Pete if it's that needed. If I ban, but it's very good into steel as well. So you need Pete's. Yeah, so it's not. You need it. That's what I thought about my green purple list as well, because like if I don't if they don't run red blue, I will most of the time ban steel, and if I ban steel, then I don't need Ursulas anymore. Honestly, the 2-drop Ursula, because they are really only needed against steel. Maybe against Bennett's green yellow, but that's really one of the only decks outside of steel where I really need the Ursulas. But yeah, I think this is a good deck.
I like the Be Our Guest as well. That seems to be becoming a little bit more popular recently, popping up on some lists, like especially dock builds, right? Because again, like sometimes the dock is what holds it all together. Some of these piles, right?
Yeah, it's basically because you need a bit more songs to make Ariel a bit more consistent. And that's still the best song out of side of them. And my red blue items, it's not too special. I think I also that's what I thought before recording. I thought I'd stump because I taked a lot for the mirror and added hideaways, because I think hideaways, especially against item mirror, is very good to get rid of the workshop and stuff. But I ban red blue most of the time, so that was kind of wrong thinking from me. So maybe I could cut the. I just didn't talk about that.
Of course.
Know. Yeah.
So I suppose like if you found yourself in a situation where, because again, like your plan is to ban red blue, but I'm sure everything's negotiable, right? When you're looking at 3 lists, you could like think I actually would prefer to bench this, and then you'll be glad to have this in your red blue mirror.
Because like shark decks, I don't necessarily ban. That's like, then I have to see the other lists to be. But the item is really what I want to ban. And then I think it's not too wrong to play hideaway still. But maybe 3 are too much. Maybe I did want to tech against the mirror, and then I thought, I banned that. Why I do that? But it's okay. I think it's not.
Yeah. But you could go either way. You could change that out and say, no, I'm just banning red, or have it as a safety clutch if you decide to not ban a red-blue deck for any reason.
I really think red-blue items is a very, very strong deck, even against and bell opening, even against aggro decks on a draw can win you games, and it's really, really strong. I think it's one of the strongest decks in the format. I would be I would kind of see it like, for me, like crazy to not bring it. So I think this lineup is very good, but I think it's obvious. That's the only downside of this lineup, and I think I think that's fair. It's a strong lineup, but obvious. I think that's fair. I think it's a solid bring.
Being obvious doesn't have to be a bad thing, right? It's like you said, sometimes it's best to just have 3 fundamentally consistent, powerful decks that are good at doing what they do. And just because you're readable doesn't mean they can stop you doing it. It's open deck list anyway. So predictable isn't always the worst thing, right?
Yeah,
just solid decks.
And I think, like I said, it's like, you can easily overthink this. It's not easy to break a format like this where you have like so many decks running around. How can you break this? You can make one color not be present for you. That's what you can do, but that isn't everything. Because like if you say you always ban steel and then opponent plays red steel, do you ban that? For example, it's like you still have to have some versatility, I think, to be not too straight line into one strategy, I think.
Well, I want to start with the Amber Steel and go, because I know that both Sky and Harlan, I know you've tested and played this deck a lot recently. Maybe you have as well, Bennett, and we'll come to you as well. But Harlan, we finished on you last time looking at Bennett, so I'll start with you. You played Amber Steel recently, and I actually watched your video that you uploaded today talking about Blurple, which was very good. Go and check it out. But I heard you say that you were just feeling a little not enjoying Amber Steel as much. Can you speak to that and speak to this list at all?
I think I think in every video I've still said like Amber Steel in my opinion is like the top, at least these aggro more focused builds. The Steel Song Wheel ones kind of struggle because Red Blue is just a horrible matchup for use. But these aggro ones, they have so many different directions to go. The person who was on Axion last week was playing a similar one of my lists, and he had this approach to it where you do this sort of you still play the piglets and the daisies, so you can aggressively quest in the matchups where you need to. But yeah, playing Ursula and 4 Zeus, just deleting anything you want, and then playing Doc just to go wider, that's just really good. I know Sky's a bit bigger on the BR Guest, which is great. And I also like an Artabax's lineup, whereas I don't know if he's noticed it compared to anyone else's, but because his ability to play green-purple tempo was so good, he's got this like lightning rod for all the bans. So in an actual essence, if they were to ban his green-purple, he is unlocked to play the top 2 best decks in the format right now. He's probably one of the only people in like the game who has that ability to do that.
Yeah, good point.
Because if this was someone else, I might go, well, I don't want to play against Red Blue. I don't want to play Amber Steel. They're strong, but of course, well, then you unlock his, I don't know, Super Saiyan mode where he gets to play green purple. so it's like, in his lineup, I think it completely works that he puts green purple in here and does it the way it's spanned out. But this Amber Steel, I've been calling it like a hybrid because in a sense you're still using the full song package, but you've even got the 4 aerials in there as well. But you also have the option to go aggro as well. I think this build is probably one of the best decks in the format, and I think they'd be quite mad to not ban it, even with the power level of Ruby Sapphire items.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it's pretty scary. Sky, your thoughts? You said you're a fan of the BR Guests.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like Harlan said, the most interesting thing about Artabax is, the first thing people think, if I hit Artabax, I'm banning green-purple. And that kind of like skews things, because I think, from what I've kind of gathered, and I think just it's a safe bet that most people are scared of the steel decks, because not just because they're the strongest, but because of what happens like when you do just check those off, the opportunities that open as far as how you construct your decks. So if they don't ban steel against Artabax, I kind of like the idea of going, okay, I want to ban red blue and build this like mid-range amber steel that like destroys everything except red blue, because I'll touch on this a little bit later when I kind of do my segment, but I've been playing the mid-range deck. I also play like BR Guest, they'll just like super value. You don't play daisies, you don't play piglets, you just kind of sit there and put up singers and just have this like monstrous mid-range value deck that can like never run out of cards and almost never miss, like Docs or Rapunzels, or even Ariel is like a pseudo Doc or Rapunzel just because it gets you that one more card, and it could be a Storm, it could set you up into a Rapunzel because it's a song. You just have so much card draw and dig. And I found out that it's just a menace to the format. Like, I started this set going on Amber Steel aggro, and I've kind of swapped to this mid-range deck that Artabax is talking about, because I don't expect more than 15% red blue. So if people are banning green purple and just opening the floodgates of saying, hey, you can play Amber Steel if you want, and you ban red blue, your only bad matchup, I think you're just going to have almost like a favorable matchup into anything, at least that one game that you get to play your Amber Steel deck. So that's definitely an interesting thing, and I think I chose to go the route of, I think I still need to ban Steel because people I think will ban my Steel, but having that advantage is definitely huge if they do decide to ban the green purple. So I see what you're cooking up there with the I'm gonna destroy everything mid range and aggro with that. So that's good thinking.
Yeah, I have one question for the green purple. I found it very interesting that you called Iago the mirror breaker. Would you say because of that? I mean, Amethyst in general. You said you don't want to. You will probably never ban Amethyst with your lineup. You will play against it. Would you say it's also necessary to pack cards that get advantage of the vanish mechanic from opponent Iagos, because it's such a good card in a mirror? Or is there a possibility that the mirror breaker is potentially a bit worse because your opponent could pack those cards like improvise or hypnotic? I don't know what it's called. Hypnotic.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think it's a risk. It's a risk, of course, to not tech into it. I don't know if everyone thinks the same way and puts his decks in a lot of Iagos. It's a bit of a gamble, of course, to to not care about it too much. At least I have Iagos myself. But if they slam full Iagos and improvise and stuff, then it will be hard for sure.
Okay, interesting. Yeah.
But yeah, I think you have to sometimes risk a bit of stuff.
I mean, what
It's
I
very hard
get is
yeah.
that those cards are very bad, or I mean bad, just
Yeah,
a cycle
it's-
card in other matchups, and therefore I can definitely understand it. And what I found interesting that it's sometimes enough to have Yago against Yago, and you don't need anything that gets taken, uses the vanish thing from your opponent's Yago, and it's enough to just play Yago yourself. Okay, thank you, awesome.
Let's move along to the one of the all-fathers of the Kiwi bird archetype, which people over Worlds will spend the whole weekend in chat saying, why is it called Kiwi bird? But nonetheless, Adam, Harlan Sweet, great to have you here, mate, and I'm glad to see that your colours are represented. Would you like to start with this deck, or is there one of the others that makes more sense to start with?
I think it's best to start with it because I kind of went with a different approach to it. I guess maybe the decks I favoured. And of course,
Love
with
this
the 3-deck
Jafar,
format,
I can't wait to hear about that.
Yeah. He's kind of had to go in with this set. With the 3-deck format, like everyone said, just ban steel. So I thought, why didn't I pose the question, what if their steel deck choice wasn't that good? Do you still ban the steel? So it was nice to see that Artabax mentioned about Ruby Steel, but I think Kiwi Birds is a little bit better than Ruby Steel. But to be honest with you, like in testing, I test with Jester or Jack Shadows. And we kind of really wanted to carry the deck over from the last set because like I was still getting results. Like I got to day 2 and Ravensburger event of it, and it was like, oh, this deck still, it may not be working for everyone or whatever, but it was still getting me results, and it seemed to be the right thing to do to keep playing it. But with Ruby Amethyst Shark being so popular and Ruby Sapphire being so popular, the deck kind of got almost unplayable because I played it at like the UK Games Expo, and you see that matchup and you just lose. And it's like 2-game format. You can't expect that. There's 2 really popular decks. So the game plan with this was sort of people probably won't ban it because they won't think it's good, and they might be right, but they won't ban it. And if I go in banning their red matchup, Kiwi Birds never really had a bad matchup into Amber Steel and Green Steel. And if they're leaning more into these control-based ones, I'm happy with that because the card that made that matchup a little bit worse was Lady. Just because on turn 3 they could go 2 wider. But if you say you were looking at Artabax's list where he didn't, they're trying to harbour up songs in hand and play advantage. You're just going to put everything on ward and turn sideways. The Jafar has to go in there because Rhino is just a broken card, and I don't know why they wrote that card. If he wasn't a Bloodborne, he'd be fine, but because he shifts on 2, it's just nuts. So you kind of basically just have to play some characters out, and like you want to Calhounarus me and hope they don't Zeus it, and then rush it in and get a 1-for-1 maybe, yeah. If not, you get to Alice Pluto and maybe you can get the ward up and maybe they just have the Rhino left, or you can just race them at that point. But Jafar's been pretty nice, getting some more value trades, and there's a lot more looters in the deck because we had the option to try Desperate Plan, which I think isn't a bad card. I think it's maybe only home is probably in this deck though, but you can buff them up as well. So yeah, I thought all around, and I thought probably as well, like if I got back from Worlds and I didn't win, which I probably wouldn't, I'd also be kicking myself that I didn't bring like Blue Steel there as well, because I don't know, I imagine for a lot of these players, like the ones who qualified really early on, this must be like a massive journey for them, and they all have their favorite decks as well.
I would not underestimate your ability, much like Artabax, for people to just panic ban this list because it's your colours, right? So I think you're selling yourself a bit short there, but I do like your thought trail, right? Because you don't want to put 2 of your best colours together, right? Because if that gets benched, you lose 2 of your best colours. You want to try and spread them about so that whatever they ban, you get to keep something that you're comfortable with. But no, it looks good. I like the inclusion of Jafar makes sense. Same as Ruby Amethyst, just having to adapt its earlier drops to be able to answer the Darn Hamster.
So yeah, I had the the same colour combo that I think Kendall used in one of the 3-game formats. Which is he put Kiwi Birds and then he put Yellow Green Discard and Ruby Amethyst. But I just never really clicked when I played Green Yellow Under the Sea. Like, I don't dispute its power level. I think it's an amazingly strong deck. I think it's probably like one of the best maybe rogue decks. I don't know when I'll call it rogue, but it's like not really in the forefront that everyone's talking about, but it is also there. I don't think I would in time for Worlds learn how to play it at the level I'd want to. not playing it at Bennett's level. So in that color combo, I was left with Chernodogs. But I also think, if Chernodogs sort of still, it has a worse matchup into the Amber Steel aggro, especially since Rhino was added. But I was still watching some games on stream, and it looked very winnable in its own right, with the practice. And also you could go another route as well, where maybe you focus them in on playing more control heavy lists, banning maybe their Amber Steel or their Green Steel. I wouldn't want to play Chernodogs into Green Steel. You could maybe focus them into playing more control late game decks, and you just play, I'm going to play my 2 aggro decks that I have in this instead. So Chernodogs is there for that. And I think with Lorcana's just got so many high rolls and things, just having an aggro deck like this, is never a bad thing. Just to be like, I really don't know what to do here. Let's just run Chernodogs out. I'm on the play. We're probably gonna, I'm playing against Ed. What am I gonna do here? Yeah. So just playing the dogs out. I thought having in the back pocket an aggro deck of this like style and caliber as well was just a good idea. I think this color combo could have easily been yellow green Under the Sea, and I think if you like that deck and have that playstyle, you definitely should try that one as well. But Chernodogs is just being kind of eclipsed right now by Amber Steel aggro, and I get it. Rhino is just insane, but I think it has places in it. You could maybe even ban the Amber Steel and go into this. I don't mind Chernodogs too much into Ruby Sapphire. I did include the Lilos in there because I kind of like them into Ruby Sapphire. They play a big Sisu and they kill it, and maybe you can recycle them all. I think this was looking in more directions of banning other decks rather than the Ruby matchups. And I guess like everyone here has thought is like, if you're playing against someone who was famed for being a Amber Steel player, you probably ban their Amber Steel. But like if you were playing against someone who was famed for being a Ruby Sapphire or Ruby Amethyst player, you probably ban that from them as well. I feel that would be the thought going into the event. And then the last colors you're left with is Ruby Amethyst. Actually for this list, as you notice, it's not even my name in the dream board. Of course, I'm part of a little testing group, and I think in that it's always good to respect what your other players like test. And Dave Attack for 2, I just kind of always respect his opinion on Ruby Amethyst.
Yeah.
So I was generally like, I thought generally like send me a list, like I'd play it, I'd go through it, and I think a lot of the Worlds players are doing this as well. I've seen a lot of the groups, they are relying on other players' skills to, work on lists and, make sure they're all fine. And I would definitely talk to my group and maybe even people who are already in this call right now, if I was to maybe go down certain routes of lists. Dave's just someone I've always respected his list. So I went with his RP list. It might just be because I play a lot of aggro decks, but Ruby Amethyst Shark just feels on a very high power level. It just controls very well. I swapped to Blurple recently, which I always thought that was a good matchup for Blurple. Learned in the hard way it's not anymore because of that damn Peter Pan Shadow Finder. It can be quite brutal actually. I feel like this is a fair shot as well into pretty much most decks. I'm not really even sure Ruby Amethyst's bad matchups would be at this point, but it feels like the way I'd done my colorings, having a Ruby Amethyst list wasn't bad. And respecting good players who would probably help me with lists is the right call.
Yeah, because you've got things to be scared of here, right? Like, again, you are Harlan Sweet. You are known for this Kiwi deck, so good odds that people ban that. This aggro, like, some people just ban the aggro. Like, again, similar to Steel being a common target for benching, just because of what it enables you to do. I think aggro is also sometimes a high priority. You see something fast enough, like we go back to Bennett's Amethyst Steel hyper aggro list, like, that's scary. And if you're going to risk being on the draw against that, so some players will just go, this looks far too fast, I'm scared, I'm going to ban that. And then you still have this like super solid, fair deck list in Ruby Amethyst. I think it's fair anyway. You're right, the Peter Pan Shadow Finder can spike that power level a lot. There's definitely some extreme high rolls available, but mostly it plays its curve, it plays a fair game, and you get to play the game most of the time, again, unless the opponents are also super aggro. But did you say that these 3 lists, most of the time you're looking at Steel probably being what you're looking to ban? Again, subject to lists.
Yeah, I think it'd be subject to player and the direction I'd want to go. So
Sure.
If they're a good Ruby player, I wouldn't mind banning the Ruby and then just taking Kiwi Birds into it and hopefully maybe getting a win with the aggro list. But if they're a good Steel player, I maybe want to ban the Steel list and then maybe lean into because I think it also depends if they're on green steel as well. I don't think Chernodox even really has a game into green steel. I think you can still aggro and get the win, but if they are a world's competing player on green steel, you know, your Chernodox probably isn't going to make it through. So I think it would depend on that. But you know, if they maybe were famed for being a Steel Song player, I might let them have that because I think my Chernodogs and my Kiwi Birds is good into that. It really would depend on matchups, but I felt like I could go in a few different directions. And also, when they were banning me, all my choices seemed kind of fair. And as well, like maybe they wouldn't expect Chernodogs, like they would probably just think it's green yellow under the sea. And I don't know if the banning format is that in depth to say the deck description. I don't think it is. It's just the colors, isn't it?
No,
You'd be present.
You,
Oh, you see
yeah,
the
you
deck
see the
list.
full
Okay.
lists.
Well,
Yeah.
remove that last point, edit that out. Yeah, I didn't think too far on that point, but yeah, it just felt like all my options were fair, and maybe they would just maybe just ban Kiwi Birds, or maybe they just ban Ruby Amethyst, or like you say, they might just ban the aggro list. But I think also making them really have to think about which one they want to ban is another good point. Yeah, if you just do 3 very strong lists, they might just ban the one that in their opinion is the highest power level, and those are usually Ruby Sapphire or Amber Steel.
Artabax, I know you've been playing some Red Purple Shark over the course of this and previous meta. Your thoughts on this list?
Yeah, it's very good. I think it's. I would probably be intrigued to ban Red Blue also on your if I were you. At least items, because I think all of your. I don't know Chanadox exactly against Red Blue items. I don't know the matchup.
Yeah, that was another point I thought, because Ruby Amethyst Shark seems to only really fall quite hard to RB items.
Yeah.
So if you just basically target that every time, you should have 3 decks that do fairly well in an environment where they can't be Sisu item locked and all that nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, it's less of a comment on the list maybe, but more of just a kind of a fun one just because of our background in Blue Steel. But if the bans were not a thing, would this change what Blue Steel you brought to Worlds?
Yeah, I feel like you could really push that Tamatoa over the edge, and I don't know. I think I would maybe look at like a no wheel sort of ramp deck. You know, just constantly recycling Porpsicles.
Sure. I guess
and
another part of this question is, how strong do you think that version of Blue Steel would be right now
yeah.
at set 8?
Well,
That's
I
something
mean,
I've been
I'd
thinking
ask
about a
you.
lot.
I'd like to know that as well. I mean, I can't remember, I think it might have been R&B posting like a theory deck that if Fortisphere didn't get banned, and you know, a lot of people are hyping up the wardrobe, and it's like, I haven't seen the wardrobe. I've done many events now, and I have not seen that wardrobe card be used. Maybe if here or there. So
A little slow.
yeah, it's a little slow what it needs to do. I've seen it a couple times.
I think you don't need the card.
No, not if you're going for a workshop deck. I think maybe I don't know. You could try an Oswald one. I think without the Fortisphere ban, there'd be a lot more interesting things. Like we could just very consistently get Bell down as well. Just cycling through cards, popping them and getting them back with Toa. I remember saying it felt like a personal attack on the small niche community we were in when they banned Fortisphere. Hiram, I sort of very much understood it.
Fortisphere kind of spray for sure.
Yeah, the Hiram ban made sense, but the Fortisphere one was like, and yeah, we're just gonna sort of knock you one, personally. I don't know. I felt like even at that time, it was just before the McDuck and the Scrooge came out, and that was when I brought Kiwi Birds to Continentals, and I was quite liking it at that point. The only reason I swapped off it was because the power level of Sapphire Steel, you know, when Hiram was around, was so big. So it'd be interesting. I'd have definitely been playing it for a lot longer if we kept Fortisphere.
Yeah, I think Fortisphere for sure could be unbanned, and you're not gonna. I don't even think it's up there with like the current top decks.
No.
I think if they were both unbanned, I think it'd be up there for sure, tier 1. But I don't think it would be like a bannable problem. I do think last set it was. But I think the decks that kind of were on the edge of giving it trouble got some new tools. Mainly, I think the steel decks got like decently better. Like green steel now running Heat Shift is pretty scary, and also just Amber Steel aggro getting stuff like Rhino, and
yeah,
and Lady's just so fast that like,
I remember as well that this Dogs was basically becoming almost not insta losses, but unless you hit like Bell Scrooge, you kind of just lost that matchup.
Dogs, I remember the 5K that I won was there was one in top cut, and that was the one deck that I was kind of scared, and I was like, okay, if I go second, I don't feel like I'm in control like I am with the other decks. So, and now they have Lady. You know, that matchup might be terrible,
yeah.
and it might not even be, you know, it might push it out down to tier 2.
Yeah.
I don't think it would, but because it's still just insanely strong. But I do remember it was a deck that was like on the edge of being a problem, but you really had to like, it was just everything had to come together for it to be like oppressive. And I think with the new cards of this set, I don't think it's at that point anymore. So I do think they could, not that they will, but I think it could be done.
It's mad that we get invited on and we somehow turn the conversation into
I love
still
it.
bands.
I love it, and that's actually a nice segue, as you referred to, from one man very much known for blue steel of one kind to another blue steel master. But unfortunately, your particular variant of blue steel was the most hit by the bans, so much so that you don't even have a blue steel list for us today. It brings a tear to my eye. I'm sure it does to your own as well. But yeah, welcome, Sky. Great to have you here, mate. Villain Club for life. Yeah, which of these lists
Absolutely.
would you like to start with for your presentation?
Yeah, like you said, it's definitely not blue steel. That's the last you'll hear me saying talking about blue steel. So so I guess to start, I'll kind of talk about what I did after the bans, because I'm kind of basing this whole experience on what I've experienced in the meta so far.
Great.
I kind of started trying out green blue, or as I call it, Bleen. It's a very controlling deck. It obviously plays, you know, Bent to My Will is like its cornerstone card. You kind of build up this turn to play Clarabelle, draw a bunch of songs and cards, then sing, bounce all their stuff, Bend to My Will. And you usually win the game if that comes off in a timely manner. That deck actually surprised me how strong it was. I think the set before I'd heard a couple people talking about, they thought it was good, they thought it had potential, or it was at least close. And yeah, so I started tinkering around with it. I saw some potential, played around with it a lot. This main problem though is Pete. Almost every in this current meta, steel is just so strong, and every list is going to be running 4 Pete. So, and you know, purple steel, which is a local favorite of people around me at least, they can bounce Pete. So if there's any of that, that's really bad. But even just, you know, chaining 2 Petes versus super efficient fast decks like Amber Steel and Green Steel kind of kills the deck. And there's just too many games I think that happens that you don't even get your turn to like do what you want to do with songs. Like you're just like, all right, if I get one turn without Pete, I can pop off and probably just win the game on the spot. But there was too many games that was just not happening, and they would just play the second or the third Pete, and I was just not comfortable with letting, you know, not getting to play the game. But with the bans in place, obviously you can ban steel, and there's no Pete possible, so you can absolutely, you know, take that in mind and build your deck around. Okay, well, if I'm not seeing steel, I can take out maybe, you know, some of my anti-aggro stuff, or at least the stuff that was scary against steel, and like, you know, throw in manners or something, which is kind of what I did with my list. Is I think the more controlling, it's very like the deck is super strong against control decks, like red purple especially.
Yeah,
but if you don't have manners, like red blue is actually kind of scary in this format. Like I think last set was a little bit less scary, but since we're, you know, have a couple free slots, we can slot in 3 manners, and all of a sudden that matchup like flips it on its head like drastically. You really just need like even just 1 manner down, and you just can sit there as they like top deck and play 1 thing per turn. So if my theory is correct in adding that in and making, you know, red blue a good matchup, red purple is already an extremely good matchup. It's very hard for them to win just because they're a little bit slower. I think green blue is actually a super strong pick. And I even actually think that the green blue items deck that's kind of been floating around is a little bit strong, with the same kind of theory of if you ban steel, stuff like Oswald, all of a sudden only brawl is the, you know, timely removal. So Oswald's just churning through free items all day. And that's like definitely a scary deck, because that's the type of deck where you just draw through your whole deck, play a Tama with 20 ink and a dime, and you OTK them. So if you are, you know, versus you ban steel and they have like red blue and maybe some other grindy deck that's trying to just outvalue you, you're always going to win that race. which is definitely something to be said. But that deck's main weakness is versus aggro, which I think the other blue-green Bent by Will deck has a little bit better matchup just because you have Muses, which can just always pop off, especially if you draw two of them. Two of them in one song, you're bouncing 3 things. That's a lot of stuff off the field by turn 4 or 5. So I think that green blue has a pretty good matchup into the non-steal aggro, which is why I think it's also a pretty interesting pick. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I think it's good in control and aggro. I will just say, forewarning, my last pick is not. I'm not super well versed in it. I haven't even played the deck this set, but I do think it's has some potential. But I will go into my next pick, which I do have a lot of faith in, which is Amber Steel, which I think is going to get banned, unfortunately. Like I said, my strategy going into this would be banning Steel. I wish I had the Artabax cheat of, hey, ban my pet deck and I get to play this mid-range deck. Because my favorite deck right now, which I think is actually the strongest deck in the format, is this mid-range Amber Steel with Be Our Guest, Aerial Sonic Warrior, 4 of Aerial 3 cost and docks. Mainly just because it beats up, I kind of responded with Artabax, it beats up on everything that's not red-blue. It's just really oppressive, and it kind of shocked me at how consistently you can kind of bully these other decks going first or second. But since I think it's going to get banned, and I'm also playing on banning Steel, I decided to go with Amber Steel aggro with Vinny, which is also super strong in my opinion. I think if you're expecting a meta, just Worlds format or not, with a lot of red blue, which Worlds format has a lot of red blue expected, Amber Steel aggro is actually a very good pick. And I've come to find out that Vinny is kind of the secret sauce that turns the games where you're going second and they're kind of doing their perfect curve of threatening B prep and Sisu early. Vinny is kind of the cheat code where you can say, hey, you still did what you wanted. You didn't have to miss anything, but I still have Vinny, and that gets me that extra 3 or 4 lore that takes you over the top. And that actually happens in a lot of games. It used to be aggro versus or Amber Steel versus red blue, even aggro versions kind of still struggled on the draw. But if you run 3 to 4 Vinny and you just need to find one of them to top off your curve, it seems to kind of fix that issue a little bit. So I think if they're banning something else and they let me have the aggro, then what's left for them is probably control decks, or also, so maybe hyper aggro, which Amber Steel, just aggro or not, is super good into. So I think that those are my two contenders. My bread and butter. One of those is probably getting banned, but that's fine. We'll have one game with our favorite deck. My third choice, of course, is red purple. I don't have a lot of experience, like I said, with this deck, but I've played against it a little bit, and I've seen kind of the power of, I think, the evasive build. I played against this weekend at playing Amber Steel aggro and mid range. It actually felt super strong at stabilizing the kind of hyper aggression that some of these new cards like Lady can bring out. Just being able to have all the good 1-drops in purple, like Diablo, Broom, and Followers, having those options, as well as you have your best anti-aggro 3-drop tools in Crab and Fox. And even cards like Ursula 2-drop, I think, is a super good anti-aggro card that doesn't see enough play. The list I put is just Kendall's evasive list, and he plays 4 of, but that was the first time I saw that, and I was like, okay, this card, holds up so much stuff early, and you just kind of have to sit there and respect it for a little bit. So yeah, I think the deck has the anti-aggro tools it needs to fight off if you do play against their aggressive deck that they choose. But it's also traditionally red purple has a good matchup into red blue. So if you can figure out how to have enough value to still have that good matchup into red blue, but have the anti-aggro tools to fight the aggro, then I think it's a pretty solid pick. But I would hope they ban that one. I would say that.
Yeah, because then you get to play your 2 favorites. But yeah, I agree. I think red purple is. I don't want to see the items build. If it's a DKP sort of build, I feel better. But I think I prefer stock RP into DKP builds, because stock RP, you've got room for Tremaines and stuff like that. But yeah, I ran this list at an event last Friday, had a super not this list, the exact list, but a Shark RP build. And yeah, the Peter Pan Shadow Finder, just what it enables is mad. And not just what it does, but just the way it forces your opponent to play the game. You made this point earlier, Adam, about if there's a Shadow Finder, then they've got enough ink to play the Shark. you just say in some board states you just can't turn sideways. So I love the power level of this deck. Bennett, we'll start with you this time about any of these lists in particular. Any questions or observations?
Okay, I have one question for deck building and one question for playing in general. So in the Amber Steel aggro list, you play Vanessa Ursula. Even though you're not playing Zeus, could you maybe enlighten what's the thought behind her?
Yeah, so I think there's plenty of matchups where, playing Vanessa on 2 is perfectly fine, especially going second. There's a lot of matchups where you aren't gonna get there, like just aggroing out, and you're gonna have to set up a singer, kind of play a little bit of a slower game. And a lot of people ask like, why not play Troubadour or over Vanessa, because it's a little bit more resilient to removal. But Vanessa is just like a super threatening thing, turn 4 and on for Rapunzel. She can sing Storm or Strength on herself, and you draw 3 cards with Rapunzel off that. That's like a huge threat, and not just for you singing it, but also for when they want to turn things sideways, they're always gonna have to wonder, oh well, they could just run the Vanessa and draw cards off of it. So I can't tell you how many cards I've drawn off of curves where I just play Vanessa on 2 and then have Rapunzel in hand. She just draws an insane amount of cards. I think the card is pretty slept on. You don't need Zeus to sing. Like, it's also you're playing aggro, so like most of the time I'd say Strength is pretty much the same as Zeus. You call it cards like Lady that can check out, two characters on turn 3, and you have 4 characters to sing Strength. There's not much your opponent's gonna have out that needs a Zeus versus that, other than like Shift Rhino. And I'll be banning Steel. So yeah.
Makes perfect sense. She's also pairing great with the lady herself. One last question, because I think you played the green blue for a long time now. I think you played it already in set 4 or 5, if I'm not mistaken. Would you say a deck that probably has such a high skill ceiling, and because people are kind of forced to play certain colorways because they want to play 2 specific decks, and I think my green yellow is kind of similar when it comes to the agency of decisions you have and the amount of different ways and routes you can go. Would you say, or do you think people will still try and bring those decks because they fit in their lineup, even though they have not played the decks for a long time to be on a perfect level with it? Do you, because would you think that people could just fall into the trap of saying, okay, green blue, and I will just play it, but the deck is so hard they will probably fail or have a hard time?
Yeah, so this is a great question. I think like people would be shocked if any like known player for a deck showed up and their color wasn't represented in their 3 decks. I think most of the people, like, obviously these are some of the best players we have currently playing the game. So I think most of them are not only great, but they're willing to put in the time to learn stuff. But there are decks that really weird lines don't come up often. That you get on stream and all of a sudden this situation that never happens pops up and you are like, well, shoot, I don't know what happens if this line gets taken. I do think some of that stuff will happen, and I still think it's worth it because just the nature of banning the decks and like your options of what you're left with. Some of these combinations are just not great. Like, if you want to play Blurple or Blue Steel, I'm sorry, but some of those combinations are just off the table because it's just awful. So it's kind of worth having like a little bit of a sacrificial lamb as far as, hey, I don't know what I'm doing, versus, hey, this deck just isn't good. And even if I did know what I was doing, it's not a good option. So yeah, I think for the most part, people, even if they're not super familiar with the deck, will be fine with taking it.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, the only card I wondered why it's only a one-off is Mother Knows Best in the green blue list. Maybe, but I'm not an expert in green blue, so that maybe it's just too clunky or uninkable.
Sure, it started out as I think a 3 of, but the more I played out, the more I was like, the most of the targets for this, you're going to be able to bounce them with Muse, even without a Sapphire Claw trigger. So, and it's really not a card you want to be casting early at all. So having it just clunk up your hand as an uninkable is kind of not great. So your welcome's just like, 4 you're welcome to me seems like enough to the targets that you want to hit. Like the game will kind of close out before you run out of those.
Adam, you had an Amber Steel list of your own. What do you think of Vinny? I know you acquired your play set recently. Have you had much chance to test out Vinny yourself?
Oh yeah, I had Vinny Le Pigeon. I got a French playset of him. Great little guy. Yeah, I really liked him. I always like in card games animal cards, so it kind of intrigued me quite a lot more. I think the issue I found was just it is very hard to play around him. He is quite the lightning rod, and like you say, if you play against Ruby Sapphire Shark, they just ignore your board, they mega ramp. But on the play, you usually end up beating them, but on the draw, you sometimes fall flat a couple lore. But if you just finish it with a Vinny, you pretty much are going to win that game. Because when they clear the board, you get all the lore from it as well. So I love it. I was playing, I'm going to shout out Primor, my friend, as well. Because I was playing his Vinny build for a little bit, which was running no Rapunzels, and I think it was only on 3 Vinnies. But I really like that. It was just basically full commit to the aggro. You just 4x like all the 2 questers. You played Mulans just to filter through the deck and throw more 2 questers on the board, and you could get rid of the songs. I really like that version as well, but I think this is really great. I'm always surprised with the one-off Lilo. I remember you telling me you're a one-off Lilo believer. And I didn't really know what that meant, but I could understand that one is like obnoxious enough sometimes when you're playing. That, you know, like I've had turns where it's like you have the piglet on the board and you top deck 1, or like you reload Lilo, top deck 1, play it, quest for like 3 or something. So it has like these really niche moments where recycling the Lilo is pretty useful. But I want to know what a Lilo believer is and why you have one off in there.
Yeah, sure. So when Lilo first came out and people were playing like 4 of, I thought the card was terrible. I thought it was another trap card, like I believe Great Stone Dragon is for the most part. Mainly just because like at the point of the game where you're like kind of out of juice and you play it, it has to come in tapped, and like the decks in the meta usually are going to have something that's just going to kill it every turn. But with Vinny, all of a sudden, if they don't have a removal for Vinny, and you can just keep paying for Lilo, even if they kill it, you're getting that 1 lore, right? It's like a checkmate. And usually in these kind of stalemate spots that something like this would happen against like red blue or red purple, they're not on like a lot of cards. Like you're kind of just like both in a somewhat gassed out state because they're trying to just close out the game. You're trying to close out the game. So there's been quite a few times where I just have a Vinny. I'm like, yeah, I'll pay 2 for Lilo and maybe play a 1 or a 2 drop that I top deck. Like that's actually a surprisingly threatening board all of a sudden, whereas Vinny usually would be a pretty bad top deck by himself because you're usually recovering from a wipe. And the games that go long like that, you draw through a pretty significant portion of your deck. So like you do see it, you know, pretty frequently.
The last thing I want to do to wrap up the pod before getting your final thoughts and final predictions about the World Championship and this format is just for a little bit of fun, do a bit of a mock setup for a match. So you'll see in our Discord call, I've posted all of your deck lists, all named. So just for a bit of fun, we're going to do a mock matchup. So let's imagine that it is the World Championship. It's round 1. The pairings are up. It is Harlan Sweet versus Sky. What a round 1 pairing. And Artabax versus Bennet. I would like... we'll start with Harlan and Sky, but Artabax and Bennet, you could be thinking about it. Harlan and Sky, be looking through your opponent's lists now, and I'll talk for another 30 seconds, and then I'll ask you to commit to type something in the Discord. Don't press enter yet. Just type when you're ready. I have a few more seconds to think about it. Which of the opponent's deck you would be benching. Again, you would get the opportunity to look through these entire lists. They are provided. You'd get a 5-minute period. I'm not going to give you 5 minutes. But please, when you're ready, type the ink combination that you would ban for your opponent. And let me know when you've done that. Bearing in mind, these guys have just talked through their strategies, right? And what they want to be banned and what they want to play. So that is
I've just heard like Sky very lowly talk about one of the choices on his list, but I can't really like because I got to try to be in the headspace of if I played him.
It's kind of good, like 1 in 5 games. So that's
like I can't just before we enter World, you go, oh, I barely played Ruby Amethyst. I don't touch that deck. It's like, no, I don't want to ban it.
Have you got it ready to go?
He's already posted his.
Okay.
Submission.
Can I change mine now?
He's gonna judge.
I mean, you're
Judge!
banning Amber Steel. Let's be honest.
No.
All right,
I-
so Sky is banning Kiwi Bird and Harlan is banning Ruby Amethyst. So go ahead, explain your point.
Yeah, I feel like I know Sky's very good on the Amber Steel and he's been talking very much of it. But I feel like if I stick to the game plan of I was gonna ban the Ruby deck so I could continue using the other ones, it's very weird for me to like the first round get scared of Amber Steel and just go, I'm gonna ban that. And then like my deck choices don't really make any sense when I should probably just go into the fray. He might get a win, loses it, and then he has to try and beat me with green blue. And the only thing is now is he's banned my Pete's, so that's kind of sucks. But maybe the 4 muses kind of is a bit brutal as well. But yeah, I kind of felt like if my game plan was go on the Ruby Amethyst, there's no blue one either for Sky. There's no Hirams or anything or dimes for him to play. So, it's kind of like I couldn't like. Yeah, I don't know. That was his signature deck. He's now on the big Vinnies, but I've also seen him play the hybrid, which I think had also many times in interviews I'd assume before World Team saying he preferred it as well. I think I saw him play it on the ICL. So yeah, I feel like it's kind of weird that I was surprised that anyone would ban Kiwi. But my backup is I get to play 2 fairly decent decks, an aggro deck and like the most consistent deck in Lorcana history, RP. So yeah, that's kind of fine for me.
And Sky, why are you banning Kiwi?
Pete.
Keyword Ward. Yeah, and Pete.
And Pete, yeah.
So I really don't want to just get Alice into Cogsworth if I played blue green. I do have one Under the Sea, and that sweeps up a lot. But if you just don't hit that, it can be pretty brutal. So
Yeah.
if he just curves out with word stuff, you can't really do what you want to do sometimes with your songs and bouncing stuff early, which is very important. So I don't want to take that 50-50. Harlan's also known as Blue Steel guy, so he's very proficient on the deck.
Yeah.
But also Chernadogs and Red Purple are like fantastic matchups for Blue Green. I've played these matchups quite a bit, and they both almost feel unwinnable. I'd say Chernadogs has more of a chance because sometimes they just hit the absolute nuts opener. But he's also not playing stuff like Curse Merfolk, which is a little bit more aggressive. So if he hits the Little Johns instead of all the triple daisy lines, you definitely have the time to just like set up a muse and then bounce and maybe find another muse, and then it's just game's over. So you can bounce a lot of stuff. And then Red Purple, that matchup is just Bend is so extremely hard to come back from in that matchup. And if you don't have manners, it can sometimes be a grind fest where like you bend them and you're both kind of just like drawing, playing maybe one character. But with the manners, it's really tough to clear with like 1 or 2 cards off the top. And then as far as Red Purple, I think it's decent into both of those. I think it's anti-aggro tools, kind of like I talked about. So Chernadog can kind of be combated with stuff like Fox and Crab and Ursula too, which I love. And then we're playing the mirror, so like sure we'll coin flip it. Why not? Evasive Red Purple and the evasive Red Purple, which sounds terrible because like Peter Pan makes Maui Shark have rush, and then you're just like, do I ever turn anything sideways? But obviously, yeah, it's even footing. So
sounds good. And before we go over to Artabax and Bennett, the other part of what I want you to do now and type in Discord is the next stage that would come from this format is you would both in secret select what deck that you would be playing for game 1. Do you like dogs? Sure enough.
Oh. I misunderstood here. My bad. I'm supposed to type what I'm playing first, right?
Yes, what you're playing. Game 1.
Okay,
so now he knows that he's up
now he's
against
gonna
Bennett.
game me.
I prematurely
He's
pulled the trigger, so he had the advantage last time. So.
Oh yeah, it's happened twice now.
All right. Well, okay. This is gonna be my answer no matter what. Just because it's the strongest deck. I also really have to talk about Amber Steel. So, but it's the strongest deck in my opinion of these 3. So.
That's fair. Alright, so let us know in the audience. You know what both players have had banned, and the game 1 match is Chernodogs versus Amber Steel. Who is winning that matchup? Let's go over to our other match, round 1 on the pairings. We have Bennet versus Artabax. So hopefully you've already been thinking about this while these two were doing their stuff. So if you could both type it in Discord, don't press enter yet, just type in what you are benching for your opponent, okay? And then let's get the reveal in 3, 2, 1, enter. So Bennet is banning green purple and Artabax is banning green yellow. Bennet, why are you banning green purple? What's the logic?
So, 2 reasons. One reason is I wanted to ban green, and the second reason is I'm up against Artabax, so I think that was the easiest decision of my life ever. Yeah.
Yeah, it's Bennett, of course, and I think the deck is really, really strong as well. And I honestly didn't annotate against that matchup too much in all of my decks, so I think it was an obvious choice for me to, because like my Ember Steel is not the craziest aggressive, and that's good for him. My green purple has a lot of Muses targets with Flynn and stuff, and against red blue it's a strong deck. So I think it's an obvious choice for me to ban it.
Yeah, again, doesn't need to be much more complicated than that. Makes a lot of sense. So let's move on to stage 2, which is now that you know which deck you cannot play, what you would lock in for game 1. So when you're ready, type that into the Discord, and then I'll count us down for you to decide what will be the deck that you start this round 1 match. Alright, so it would be Ruby Sapphire, which for Bennet is a DKP variant, not the item build, versus Amber Steel Aggro. So again, I know play draw is very important, but you know what decks are banned. That's going to be the opening game. Let us know in the comments who you think would be the winner of that match. But gentlemen, it's been a super long podcast, so I do want to wrap us up. We've had a fantastic chat. It's been really long, but I really hope people enjoy it. I want to take the time to say thank you so much for joining me again, especially for Artabax and Bennet in particular. It's nearly 1 o'clock for you. It's coming up to midnight for me and Harlan, but I'm so glad we were able to make this happen. This will be my last content before I go away. And yeah, all of these guys in this call, as far as I'm concerned, could quite easily have been at the World Championship this year if just a little bit more luck and circumstance had been on the sides of these players. I know you all could have been there. I respect the hell out of all of you so much, so I'm really grateful to have you here and to get your thoughts, and I'm sure the audience will be as well. But in the nature of trying to wrap it up and keep this video a reasonable length so that people want to actually watch it all, we'll go in a circle. I just want you to tell people where they can find you and answer the final question of the podcast. What will be the most banned ink combination over World Championship weekend overall? Let's start off with Bennet. Your first time on the channel. So glad to have you, mate. I'm so glad we were able to make it happen. Where can people find you? What's going to be the most banned deck over Worlds?
What a great time I had. Thank you so much for having me. You can find me on X, on Instagram, and on YouTube. It's all Bennet_Lorcana. I love to talk Lorcana, and feel free to comment and write me messages. And I think the most banned color combination will be Emerald Steel, because one has steel, which is, as Guy already mentioned, a very potent color, and also it has a really great way of just producing non-games, and in the hands of the right player, it's more likely that this happens, and it's a great strong deck, so I figure that would be the answer.
Thanks for having me, Baker. It's always a pleasure. Yeah, you can find me on X. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on YouTube, where I have a podcast with my good friend Lorcana Decklists, the Artacast. And yeah, I have MetaFi too. And yeah, that's that. I pick something spicy for I would say red blue, because it's the most banned, because it's like if that's out of the way, you can build your decks really, really differently. And I think that's might be intriguing for a lot of people, although I think, of course, still is also very appealing to ban. But just to say something different than the others, I say red blue.
Thank you very much for having me. And I think, I don't know if I speak for everyone, but saying very proud of you, man, for going off to Worlds as well.
Yes.
And yeah, really excited for that. I think you've really earned that. You've captured a lot of the community's heart. Yeah, but you can find me on, it's called X now, not Twitter. Yeah, Harlan Sweet. I've got a YouTube channel called Harlan Sweet. Just posted some new content out, and I have a Metafy as well, which has a subscription tier, and we just donate all that money to a charity that we choose every month. It's like $1.50. It's not very much, and then we put some meta roundups and stuff behind that paywall just to, get something going, which is nice. And the most banned, I was generally thinking red blue as well. And maybe that's because in my mind it just opens you up to play lots of decks that you probably couldn't play with like the most hyper controlling deck in the game. So yeah, I think that one it was, and also as well the talent that you're going to be getting here. It's not going to be some person who's just picked up red blue. It's someone who's going to be playing this at the most optimal level, being able to handle like the low rolls that you get with workshop to a win. And also being able to just handle Ruby Sapphire Shark as well. Like those two decks are just so powerful. So yeah, I go red blue.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me and let me ramble about what intrigues me in this game.
Please.
I would just say steel in general, but I mean, if I were to pick an actual combination, it'd be amber steel. I think green purple is a little bit stronger than yellow purple, and I think the red blue amber steel, green purple, and the other combination with red blue, green steel is still going to probably dominate the format. I think you can run into the trap of trying to metagame too much and kind of have this like Princess Bride-esque like game of wits that you could kind of play yourself a little bit if you go too far into it. So I still think those will be super dominant. And I think banning steel opens up a lot of ways to build your deck very like greedily, just because you don't have those super efficient early game threats that steel kind of does in this set 8 meta that we have. And where you find me, Sky Lorcana on Twitter, and then also Sky131313 is my Twitch, which hopefully someday will get resurrected from the grave.
I hope
hopefully with some good news from Worlds, we'll say that. So
let's hope so. But yeah, I do miss your streams. But yeah, all amazing content creators and players. Again, a pleasure to have you. All those links will be down below. But that's going to be it from me for now. I leave for the world. By the time you see this, I'm hopefully already there. So hopefully the flight went well. But that's it from me for now. Thank you so much for watching. If you're brand new to the channel, please subscribe for all things Lorcana. Hit that like button to show your support. And we'll see you soon.